Thank you. All right, Catarina, I wanted to start with you because I really enjoy your story of how you have made some big changes. So I know you have some slides you want to show to be able to kind of talk about what you do now.
Yeah, what you do I think before. It's useful that you understand what I'm doing because I'm in a different spectrum than what we heard until now. I know some people in the room, but very few. So I lead this. 5 years ago, I left a big media in Portugal called Diário de Notícias, the oldest newspaper in Portugal, and I founded a local startup called Mensagem, which is message from Lisbon, Mensagem de Lisboa, and it was a small group of journalists, five of us. Me and the other editor of this big newspaper, we left and we started this. I would like to show a bit what we do. Okay, sorry. It's much simpler so that you understand. So basically what do we do at Mensagem? We do journalism and everything else. So we define ourselves as being neighbors in a city. It's a big city, but it didn't have any local media. And so we decided to start to feel. And that's one of the reasons I left the bigger newspaper. We are going to speak about that. We decided to have a very different point of view, a very different mindset from traditional media. So we see ourselves as neighbors, as everybody else. And then we started to do many things. We started to do parties. We started to do works of art in the city. We started to tell the stories of the real people we've been talking a bit about community. Yeah, that's one of our parties. So let me, okay, yeah. So this is kind of the things that we do. We do dinners with our readers. We did a work of art. It's there in that wall. We also did an ice cream flavor about liberty because we had our revolution was 52 years old this April, and we curated a story which was, what does liberty tastes like? And our readers thought it was a watermelon, and we did an ice cream flavor that was sold in a local ice cream shop. And we are based in a cafe. It's the cafe in the last picture. We had a homeless guy write for us chronicles about what it is to be a homeless person, and what else? And we tell the stories of the people in the city. So no politicians, unless they are interviewed by real people. We don't do economical things. We don't do the usual power accountable and investigation journalism, but we do a lot of what was talked about today. We do community, because sometimes, and this is the last thing that I will say, sometimes when we are struggling for freedom of speech, we sometimes forget that everyday people exist, and we sometimes just let them go. And I think a lot of what John said about being the community in Minnesota and Minneapolis is also that, is being with the people where they are. And this is some kind of weird way of looking into freedom of speech, because it's also to bring these people, these persons that are not usually in the media, to the media. And the impact that we have in every individual life is what we count as our work. It's not only to hold the power accountable, it's also to give power to the people in the streets. And that's basically what we do. These are our heroes, these are the people of our stories, and you don't see any politician there. These are the people who are on the streets, and we talk about them. Yeah, so sorry, I was...
Well, no, I'm glad you described what you're doing now. But talk about where you were, why you were unhappy, and how you made a decision for yourself as a journalist to make change.
Yeah, so this is exactly why I tried to change, because I was leading this newsroom, a traditional newsroom, and when COVID came, I was already a bit unhappy because the management of the company didn't want to make our newspaper more about the people on the streets. And they wanted to keep it like political or economical or institutional, as you can say. And so I was privileged because I had a good economical situation and I could do that, so I quit. And I decided to do whatever I felt was right, which is something that usually journalists can't do in newsrooms, unfortunately. And I think that's part of the reason, because journalism is on crisis. Let me finish the sentence. Because we've been talking here a lot about the good that we do. But let me tell you something. To be in the position where we are now, there's a lot of things that we did wrong also. And we didn't pay attention to the people. We, as I think Robert was saying, we want to get connections with the powerful and not with the people who are living on the streets. And I think that a lot about what David was saying about the breads and eggs and milk problem is that people feel that, and they feel that we've left them behind. And this comes from 2009, the big subprime crisis, and the people understood that we had protected the powerful in the economical system, and we didn't criticize them enough. We were very, I would say, we were very vain. We sometimes, journalists are very vain, and they think they are the power because they speak to the power, and they are not. And so a lot of what we did was exactly that. And I started to feel very uncomfortable not telling the stories that we should tell. And so I jumped out of my big car, big salary, big community job, and I decided to get a funder at first to found a small media. We are 5. We are 2 older journalists and the rest are really young people. We don't work as much, you were asking me this today, we don't work as much as we did in terms of time and rush, but we do 1 story per day, the most, but we spend a lot of time doing live journalism, for example. We did a lot of shows, we did 8 shows last year, 2 shows this year with real people on stage telling their stories to the city. And we, I mean, personally, it meant a change of mindset, because it's much more interesting for a journalist to be, I mean, the idea that you have that you are powerful is to be among the powerful, and it takes some time to change. Like my phone book is totally different from what it was. I had all the politicians and, you know, the prime minister and so on my phone book, and now I have like the lady who does gardens in one of the neighborhoods. So and it's okay. You just have to change your mindset, and I'm much more free. I think this is a word that resonates to a lot of you, right? Being free to do what you want, being free, but not to do what you want because you feel that you need to do it. It's because you feel like people are asking you to do this. And this is very interesting because we started 5 years ago, and people are still very demanding on having news stories, on having, you know, of having other communities. We are the only ones who have, I mean, Black people all over our website. They are not usually on the news, and Camila, I'm sure, can state to this. And we search for those. We have many women on our webpage, because women are not in Portugal still very powerful, but they are doing things, and we cover those things that they are doing. So there's a lot that was needed, and the proof that we were doing what was needed is that we are still going on. I'll talk about the bad parts later.
Leave that comment on a hopeful note? Yeah. All right, that's fine. You know, I think one of the big takeaways for me when I'm hearing you say all of this is that you're doing stories that you like, you make an impact. You know, Arwa, when I was hearing you talk, you know, you were a CNN international correspondent. I mean, you don't just get there by, doing random story. I mean, you were at the top of like the networks. Why leave?
That's a very good question. To be honest, sometimes you just read the writing on the wall. And sometimes, and I think this was a part of it, was that it for me? Like, on a very personal note, it was like, is CNN senior international correspondent it? And is this format of telling stories, within the sort of mainstream legacy media, is that really what I want to do? And so I was there and realizing that, also to be completely straight up about it. So I obviously have commitment issues. And I used to always try to just sign a 1-year contract. And it would drive my boss crazy. And he would always get me, then we would negotiate on like 2 years or 3 years or this or that. So I always had a little bit of a niggle in the back of my head of like, there has to be a next chapter. And then it got to a point where I think, and again, this was very deeply personal, but I could see the two choices. And one was stay at CNN, coast, high profile job, whatever, but then deal with all of the everything that was around that. And the other was, let's just bite the bullet and see where you go on your own. And so I jumped. Also because there's one thing that really scares me, like legit terrifies me, and that is regretting something. And I was more scared of regretting not leaving and living with a what if and an if only than I was of failing. And I played this little game with myself. I was like, okay, so what happens if I crash and burn? And just to be straight up also, like when I left CNN, I went out to shoot a documentary that was very much the sort of storytelling that I want to tell. And how do you get the story of survivors of war in front of an audience that doesn't care about them? And so it's this crazy adventure to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. It's 4 young adults, but they're from Afghanistan, Syria, and Ukraine. And so I really wanted to go do that. But again, back to the whole concept of like what scares me, I didn't want to reach a point in time where I was like, oh, if only. And so if I crashed and burned, what was the worst case scenario? I mean, at 50, I was going to go live with my parents. Like, okay, that would be super embarrassing, but like whatever, I'd get over it.
Well, and are you happier now?
Happy is a big word.
True.
I honestly, I really think that happy is a big word. And there's this
satisfied. Maybe.
There's this incredible quote out there, and I'm forgetting by who because I've got menopause brain. But it basically goes, for happiness, one needs stability, but joy can spring from the cliffs of despair. And so to answer that, I would say that I am now more capable of creating my own moments of joy when I need to than when I was before, and that I do not regret the decision for a second.
That's beautiful. I love that quote. Dr. Zankova, let's talk about being a media law expert. We heard from the deputy editor of The Economist talk about how laws have been working in many cases against journalists. You were telling me about a law, I believe here in Bulgaria, that was on the books or trying to be to help journalists, but just it's not happening.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers to be on this panel. In fact, maybe my profession as a lawyer, a media lawyer, puts me at a distance from the real journalistic work. So I have spent time in newsrooms. I think that if I'm on working at a media, I'll panic every day. So it's not easy. And I think that this is one of the most socially dedicated and complex profession, but not always well understood and accepted by the public, and also by the people that have to support, let's say, my colleagues, lawyers, because here in Bulgaria, 10 years ago, there were ideas for introducing amendments to the criminal code. And these amendments should strengthen the protection of journalists, as, for instance, protection of medical persons and of teachers. It was strengthened, and there is criminal liability if there is physical assault on people practicing this profession. But there was no interest at all on the part of the regulators, and I would say even there was no interest at the level of the Council of Ministers for introducing this law, or any deputy can introduce it in the National Assembly, for strengthening the protection of journalists, because journalists are working 24 hours, 7 days under great pressure. It is a very alluring profession, let's say, because it is very creative, but this creativity, it is at the cost of something. It is at the cost of your emotional exhaustion. Also, it may bring you to burnout, and all the conditions that are not in place, as in other countries, in my country as well, this insecurity that all journalists feel, they can be perilous. And I would like to make one more point that probably you know, that according to UNESCO's data, this is a profession, journalistic profession, with the shortest duration. So we have to have this in mind. But unfortunately, it is difficult to persuade regulators that they should do something and improve the conditions for journalists, their working conditions, also especially their payment. Maybe because they see only the facade of this profession, which is very attractive, it is very colorful, but what happens behind? We have already listened to the stories of my distinguished colleagues and these very talented ladies here, but I would like to make at least two comments, what they have already said. One comment about the Portuguese experience. I think that it's very important to have such successful bottom-up stories. And about the other stories, the other story, let's look at journalism with fresh eyes. Probably this is also one of the solutions at a personal level.
Yeah, well, and with fresh eyes, I'm going to pass it back to Catarina. You know, when we think about smaller news organizations, sometimes we don't hear about them staying around for a long time. How do you stay financially viable at a time where only the big corporation or news organizations owned by the big guys are surviving?
Actually, in Portugal, it's the other way around. So the big organizations are in very big crisis. I don't know how it is here. I don't know enough about Bulgaria. But the big organizations are in debt. They are in very bad situation. There has been some salary issues. So it's not like it is. It's not like if you go to work on a smaller organization, it's worse for you, because it is worse anywhere. The situation is very bad. There's no USAID kind of help, because we are from a southern European country. So European Union also sees us as very rich. We are not, but they see us as that. So there's no foundational money, nothing like the Bulgarian American Foundation, nothing like that, nothing like that. So there's no foundational money, and we have decided, and we are not a non-profit. We are a for-profit, though we don't have that much profit, but we have a little bit of profit this year. What we do is exactly what I told you, like all of these projects have been financed by several things, namely foundations, but not in the journalistic sense. So foundations run away from journalism. They are afraid that we will do something that may harm them. And so what we sell, for example, is pop-up newsrooms. So we had this experience where we went for neighborhoods that are news deserts, as you were saying, and we went there with our newsroom, stayed for a week, and did stories about the neighborhood. And this was paid by a foundation. So it is a social work that is being paid. We also have some sponsorship things, like Google doesn't give money to journalism anymore, but they are with us in a podcast about cities, about what cities may look like in 30 years. So you have to have a lot of imagination. You have to have a lot of things being done besides journalism to finance the journalism that we do. So that's one extra problem, and that's the part that's starting to appear, which is we have to do a lot more than we used to do. Like, I am a journalist by training, by profession, by everything. I was always a journalist, but now I'm more of a marketing / HR / CEO / administrative / fundraiser / whatever you can add, and also cheerleader for the team. So everything comes with a toll, and sometimes you have to be very happy in what you're doing to not burn out, I think. So the part that I think it's more important is that a lot of it is what you said, like maybe be content, be happy, be joyful for what you do, and understand that maybe you are not going to change the world, but you are going to show a life and change the life of a person that you talked about. Like one of the guys that was there is a janitor. He cleans the streets. But we happen to find out that he also wrote books for kids about trash and about, I'm forgetting the word, I'm very tired, recycling. And we showed his story. And when we showed his story, he was able to go on TV, he was able to publish his books, and now he's going to be showing the books in the book fair next month. Yes, so it's like, okay, so we changed his life. That's enough for a year of work, I think, and we have more stories like that. So I think journalists, and we've been talking a lot about that, and many of the people here have been talking about that. We can move, and Robert was saying that we can really out dictatorships, but we can also change lives of normal people. And so I think that a part of what we need to do, and I don't know if this is a mental health thing, but it helps you cope, that you understand that maybe changing the world is not what they taught you in journalism schools, but it can be to change the life of everybody, of everyday life. Like, for example, when we published these stories, and you have to stop me because I can speak forever about this. When we showed these chronicles of this homeless guy who was not homeless, and when he started writing for us, because he was on a housing first project, and he already had a house, but we paid him to write chronicles for us. He wrote amazingly, and we had many people sending emails to us and comments on Facebook and Instagram saying that they didn't look at homeless people as they used to. So they never could look at somebody who was on the streets okay, so this guy is here because he's kind of crazy, he doesn't know what to do, he's a drug addict. And when a normal person got into this life because he had, many bad lucks in his life, and people understood that can change a bit what people think about homeless people, then we have done our job. And so I think a part of what you're saying, like, you will always have breaking news, right? So you'll always have a day when you have to work until midnight. But then maybe next day you will not. And then, not everything is perfect. And I think that Instagram and all that pushes you into perfection, right? pushes you into this beautiful life that you're going to change the world, and maybe you just have to change a life, or you just have to maybe not change a life, maybe not even that, but you try, and in that trying, you have to have that joy. I think that's what we are doing. What was the question? Oh, the financing. The financing is hard. It will always be. There's no evident business model, so you have to move from the little square where you are at when you are a journalist, and maybe understand how you can make money in many other ways. That's what we do every day.
Yeah, I do have a lot of friends who have gone into like the nonprofit journalism sector, only to find out after 2 years they're closing and they're off to find another job. And so, for younger journalists, is that a safe bet?
Well, when you become, I will not say a nonprofit, because we are not a nonprofit, as I told you, we are a company. We were backed for the first 2 years by an entrepreneur. We never did zero receipt. So we had incoming money from the outside from the beginning. We always did grants. We applied for grants, European grants, because there are no grants in Portugal. We did sponsorships from the beginning. We did all the projects that we could. So it is a different kind of work. And if you are just interested in, and I protect my team from this part. So I am the fundraiser, right? We have a producer to produce the festivals that we do, the shows and so on. But you have to understand that you are going to be doing a very different job. I am part of if anyone wants to be part of this, please contact me. I am with, Dimitar is there. We are part of, no, you're not in reference, right? You're not, but the European correspondent is. So I am part of independent media circle in Europe. It's called Reference Circle, referencecircle.org. We have about 30 members that are exactly that, independent small media in Europe. And as we look in our conversations and everything, everybody there, and that's why I was pointing to Dimitar, because he's also that, everybody who is a journalist but has an independent media is also an entrepreneur. So if you don't have this drive of convincing people of what you are, of being a little bit of a shoe seller, that's what we are. Like we sell our job, our work. It's a good-willing work. It's a well-minded work, but it's a work, and it's a product also what we do. So if you don't have this drive, don't go into independent journalism. But if you believe in what you do and you understand the rules of the market, then you can go and do this. But you will have to do a lot of things, and I don't know if you do it too, because I'm not aware of that. But a lot of what I do is fundraising, and fundraising means that you have to sell yourself the way that journalists are not. They are trained to do the other way, right? Like you do, right? We are trained to be not in the news, not the news. We are trained to not be part of the news. We are trained to, to not do, to not sell yourselves. And a fundraiser needs to sell themselves, needs to sell the work that we do, to sell the value of what you do. And I think that this part is also interesting because it really shows you that maybe you should be a little bit of that when you are also a journalist. Because many times we take for granted that people value what we do and they don't understand what we do fully. And so this part that we must value and sell what we do is sometimes a lesson, even for journalists. So is it a good bet? It is if you are willing to do the things that are involved in that part.
Can I just add one quick thing though? Because I think you were asking if it was a safe bet. Yeah. I mean, really? Like, But to be a bit more serious about that, and like I think you and I were both in a bit of privileged positions when we pivoted, right? So I don't have kids, I don't have responsibility. And that does change the calculus. So I would say if you are going to go out and bet on yourself and take a risk, when you're younger is the time to do it before you have these other responsibilities. I know colleagues of mine who would love to jump ship and go off and try dabbling in something else, but you know what? They can't because the stakes are a lot higher for them. So I'm not necessarily advocating for everyone to be childless and responsibilityless, obviously, but you know, if you're younger, now is the time to go out and try different things. See what's going to work best for you. There's so many options that are out there within the journalism and storytelling space that now is when you can actually explore. I think one of the big challenges that we all face as we're sort of like developing ourselves through life is that, you know, society and people want to shove us into this identity far too soon before we even know exactly what it is that we want and what it is that's going to keep us satisfied throughout the whole trajectory.
Well, and because we have so many young journalists, I wanted to ask you back to talking about mental health. Do you feel like we need to have a change of culture within our newsroom space to be able to make it a better working environment?
So here's the thing, and I want to go back to what you were saying earlier about Gen, what is it? Z. No offense to anybody in this room. I think we need to find a happy middle ground, right? Like, so my generation is a generation where, you know what, our parents just let us run super feral around the streets. We figured everything out on our own. Nothing was handed to us. I, long story super short, got a job at CNN eventually because I literally sold towels and toilets. Like the most unconventional pathway you could possibly think of. Doors shut in my face, I figured out how to dig a metaphorical tunnel underneath them. And what we need to do, I think, is develop a sort of balance between you still do have to be tough because it's a tough job, but you also need to be able to, without judgment, say, hang on a sec, like I need a minute. And my slight bit of concern with the new and upcoming generation is that, I don't know how to say this without getting myself in trouble. There's a bit too much room that is being created for, I can't do this. And we need to be very careful of that. Because do you know what? Like, I'm sorry, if you're having a rough day, like that person in Afghanistan whose story you're supposed to be covering, and it's your responsibility to give them a voice, like they're having a way worse time. And so what we do actually need to do is create the sort of situation and space where you can have the tools that will give you the strength to get through that rough day so that you can serve the people who you are meant to be serving, but at the same time not harm yourself even further. And maybe that's what the conversation needs to be more framed around, is how do we alter the thinking so that we're creating newsrooms that aren't causing more harm? And obviously it's beyond the newsrooms too, though, right? Like every single industry, us as a society, if you talk about your mental health, you're weak. You know, it's still viewed as being a weakness. Like, I challenge anyone to call me weak. Do I have issues? Absolutely. Do I care if you judge me for them? No. And am I one of the toughest people you will meet? Yes. So being able to handle, and this is the conversation shift, being able to acknowledge and handle your own mental health is almost the same as taking an aspirin when you have a headache. You know, there's no shame in telling people like, oh, like my brain feels like it's about to explode. I know how to deal with that. I can handle my headache and get through my day. I need to be able to handle my mental health and still get through my day. And I think that's the conversation that we need to have more of, and like eliminate the whole stigma thing.
Yeah, Dr. Zankova is going to add to that.
Thank you. So I would like to add some points here. Yes, it is very hard, I think, to be on your own, to register a foundation or non-profit organization and to look for funding. So about Bulgaria, what is the situation like? So America, for Bulgaria, does not sponsor any foundation, and any media outlet that has applied for funding. I have also registered, how many years, 12 years ago, a foundation, Media 21, and I'm on my own. So I look for funding through projects, European projects. So what are my impressions from the projects? First of all, these projects become more and more complicated. They're more multidisciplinary than focused on a single field. And third point here, there was such a need to hire an expert about some very specific work, let's say doing a data set, some professional tables, and I asked some journalists to help me. Nobody answered positively. So I had to search for an expert about these tables among IT specialists, for instance, from another profession. So this is also, I think, another problem that journalists, they want to stay and they feel very comfortably in their field. They don't want to do some extra work, let's say, that they're not very sure how they will do it. And also, I think that the education at these media departments and journalistic faculties, it is very much focused on, let's say, on knowledge, okay, about development, journalistic developments, let's say, in general, but in my view, in the digital age, our students, they need more skills, even in coping with tables and with IT issues, etc. And what I would like to add also about the mental health, I think that for many years we have been concentrated on media organizations, media as institutions, regulation of the media as public, as entities, but we missed during these years what exactly a journalist is like. We missed the topics about journalists' minds, about the journalists' feelings, what do they think about, how they feel. We missed a lot of this human, purely human and very personal problems. And now I think that this is a niche between the media, between the institutional and the personal, that we have to fill in how. So even this talk, for me, is a great experience because I know how we can push forward along this trajectory. And I would like to draw attention only to the title of an article that with my colleague, Dr. Ivo Injov, we wrote 2 years ago, and we expect it to be published in a Spanish collection, in a Spanish book, though this is the only article in English. It is about these problems, how journalists feel about their profession, how other journalists feel about their colleagues, about their behavior, about their state of mind, about their reactions. And it was based on the collection and the collecting and processing of more than 1,300 units from the press, covering 3 stages in the development of journalism in Bulgaria. Before World War II, during communist time, and then after the democratic changes. And I have prepared some quotes here. Probably there is no time for them, but I think that what journalists think about the profession, about their colleagues, these are very important clues. How we can move forward along this new type of studies about journalists, about journalists as human beings. This is how I call the topic.
Yes, I always say we're humans first, journalists second.
Yes.
I wanted to be able to take some questions from those of you out there who are curious about something.
Awkward. Very awkward. Just saying.
Oh, wait. There we go.
Hi, I'm Paulina Krim from Finland. So what would be the thing that you, as a journalist, are not willing to give up? What would be the last thing that you would fight for?
You have the mic.
My integrity. My integrity, definitely. Yeah. Sorry?
Is it obligatory you to be alone and you personally to give up with your secretary, of course? Or there are colleagues also.
I'm not following.
You don't follow me.
Do you have to work alone? Got it. No, of course not. When I was at CNN, I can still 100% fully stand behind the integrity of my reporting and that it was not compromised. I will always, and I've always stated that, no matter who you are or where you work for, at the very least, if you can stand behind the integrity and the quality of what you yourself are doing, what your name is attached to, then you're still living up to your own moral standards and your own moral courage. So no, I don't think that you need to be alone. And in fact, I think that you can help sort of propel others in a more positive direction.
Yeah, I had some time to think. So I think two things, Paulina. One is joy, because I think that you have to have a sense of purpose. And that sense of purpose is what gives you a joy in life. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? What are we all doing this? And the second thing is connected to that. And it's a kind of, I think it's a bit, it's soul. It's your soul. It's like, I teach journalism, and I one of the very beginning, at the very beginning, I always tell the students that, and you can be lost in this in the social networks. It's like your story, and this is better in English than it is in Portuguese because it's the same word. Your story has to be connected to the history of the moment that you are living in, and so everything that you do has to have like a moral, like a value, like, like even if it is the story of the homeless guy, it is connected to the moment that Lisbon is going through, which is gentrification, less houses for people. Everything has to have a connection, a symbolic connection to the moment that you are living in. And I think that's part of what we do. When we did that ice cream, the flavor of liberty, of freedom, it is because the extreme right is in rise in Portugal, and they are questioning the moment that we stopped having a dictatorship. They are questioning why did that happen, if it was so bad before, maybe that freedom was not, and they are questioning the freedom that we had after the revolution. And they are questioning the amount of prisoners, political prisoners, that we had before that, because after our revolution was the contrary of revolutions here, and we had the communists did the revolution, okay? So they were in the freedom side. And this party, which is extreme right party, very populist, very conservative in the right, they are questioning the freedom that we had after the revolution. So when we had this idea of doing an ice cream connected to freedom, is to prove that, yes, we had this freedom, and it was sweet, and it was fresh, and it was all that. So it is a way of not losing like your soul. Your soul is what connects you to the history. And your soul as a journalist, I think, It's what connects you to the moment that we are living in. And above all this are the human rights, which I think are what protect us from losing our integrity, losing our soul, losing our joy also. Yeah.
That's a great question. Yeah, there's another question over here.
How did you decide to become a journalist?
Very easy to answer, because my grandfather was a non-professional journalist for a local newspaper. And when I was like, I don't remember being myself without him writing stories on his machine. How do you say this? Typing machine? Typewriter, yes. I always forgot the. So I started to tell stories. Like, you know, I saw him telling stories, and then I just, you know, I don't remember not wanting to be a journalist. Yeah. Not only because I wanted to change the world, which is part of it, but for everybody, but because I wanted to tell these stories. Yeah.
So I was a biology major. I did not study journalism, never have, not once. I was in New York when 9/11 happened, and I am Syrian American. I was raised in a very cross-cultural household. I grew up mostly in Morocco and Turkey, and I always joke about how, you know, our breakfasts were Lebanon, za'atar, and blueberry pancakes. And so post 9/11, I was really seeing the sort of dehumanization of the other, especially when the US shifted from Afghanistan to Iraq, and it didn't make sense to me because all of a sudden, like, even though I present so American, but, you know, I was part of them and my family and half of my family and my friends and all these people who I'd grown up with were all of a sudden part of this horrible, nefarious entity that was out to, you know, kill and destroy the other half of me. And I figured, well, you know, you present so American, you sound so American, look so American, but I have such an intimate connection and I am the other. And so I was like, oh, I'll just go be a journalist and tell, you know,
The other stories.
people's stories to each other. And that went really well.
And you, why do you want to be a journalist?
Just like I don't anymore.
I know.
Probably because I want to show people their stories of everyday life. I want to show small stories of like normal people and like inspire other people with their stories.
I mean, there's also, you know, when we also talk about journalism, I think we're in a space where it's like it's moved beyond their traditional space. I mean, quite literally, everybody is a storyteller, right? Every industry has the story to it. And so even if it's not within, there's something, like I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but one of the parts of it that I do love is the window that it gives us into other people's lives where they have agency over how their story is actually being told. And that, I think, is something that, unfortunately, you know, traditional journalism sort of, in its attempt to give voice to the people, stole the people's voice. And now people are claiming it back to a certain degree. And so there is this sort of utopian world where, you know, we have so much more appreciation for people. We're so less judgmental about them because we've heard so many of their stories in our ecosystem that exists on our phone that we're no longer as, you know, hardened against each other. But again, I don't have hope, so good luck with all that.
Yeah, and there's something else about this normal people thing, and I'm sorry that David is not here, because when I also do commentary on TV about American politics, a lot to comment these days, and so I run through the media in the US, and it's very hard to find voices that are not from mainstream, what Trump would call liberal media, because sometimes I don't understand how can people just, you know, follow these decisions that Trump has done, and what we've talked about today makes a lot of sense to us, but what is the sense being made on the other side of the aisle that puts people in, I know that you talked a bit about this, that puts these people that make them vote for him? What are they thinking? And it's very hard for me to understand, but it's also very hard to find those voices in the media. And in Europe, I could call people, but how can I know what led them to this? What do they feel about this Iran war? What have they changed? I know the pundits. I know what's his name, the guy from the YouTube guy that. Oh God, those guys that were the MAGA. Yes, exactly. Tucker Carlson. I know what he says, but I don't know if what he says resonates in the people that voted for Trump. And I would like to hear more about them.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that that's your foundation for wanting to become a journalist, because I think so many of us start with that foundation and then we get crushed by all of these external things that happen within newsrooms, within all the things I talked about at the beginning, that we then change our minds. So I think it's so important to come back to that foundation of why and keep that in mind. And just like Catarina was saying, you'll have those days where you tell the story on the homeless guy, and that's like your best story for the month, that kind of keeps the glue together while you're covering the mass shooting or the fatal car accident or whatever else that you have to go cover.
Like that story doubled our readership, doubled. We were very at the beginning, and that was the reason why people started to follow us, really.
And you hold on to those moments.
Kate, just letting you know, we have time for one more question.
Okay, thanks, Zach. All right, who's got an awesome question? All right, and this wraps up like our conference practically, so you're gonna end it with a great question, right? All right, no pressure.
I wanted to ask, so obviously as people evolve and artificial intelligence evolves with them, do you think truth and freedom of speech will become obsolete at some point?
Entirely obsolete? No, but I think the conversation about truth is one that we actually do need to have, because the truth is not objective, right? The truth always is and has always been framed by the narrative of the person who is either presenting it or who is trying to manipulate it. And I think that's something that we need to sort of accept to a greater degree. I mean, there's certain truths that are undeniable when you're reporting a story, right? X amount of people are dead, X amount of people are injured. But everything else that goes around that is very much a gray truth. And that's the challenge that we face. And I think that's the challenge that is becoming even more difficult to try to push through, because there is such polarization and back and forth in social media and AI and all of the bots and the this and the that and the whole like credibility campaign that's happening. I think that's something that we need to be very careful about. And that also kind of goes back to, at least from my view, the whole mental health conversation. Because when you're able to deal with your the better you know yourself, the better you can deal with your own mental health. And the better you can do those two things, the more in tune you are with manipulations when they're happening to you, and the more forcefully you are able to push back against them. So it all kind of twists up into each other. Sorry, I think I just lost my voice.
Yeah, I think that, like she said, truth is, I know this is the buzzword for this conference, but like freedom is also very important. And I think that there are more basic values that are human that we may have to hold on to, because your truth is different from my truth, right? But freedom is pretty much the same, right?
Thank you. My point on this, very important, the truth, of course. There are different truths. Every person has his or her own truth. But I think that at the core of freedom of expression as a right is the search for truth. So without the search for truth, there will be no freedom of expression. So let's put our soul in the search for truth.
All right. Well, thank you. That's all the time we have, I guess. So thank you.